Hello and welcome back to the Listening Bee. Today's guest is Elizabeth Judith, a TEDx speaker, certified life coach, and the creator of the Loving Discipline Method. And today we're diving into how we can enjoy self discipline and start to utilize it to create real, sustainable change from the inside out. So, hello and welcome, and thank you so much for being here, Miss Judith.
Oh, thank you. You can call me Elizabeth. And I am
Okay,
so thrilled to be here. And I love the way you described that. That's
thank
wonderful.
you. Yeah,
Yeah,
so I
it's
would
my
love to
privilege.
start by if you could explain your definition of self-discipline because I know that a lot of people have misconceptions about what it is, and I would love
Yeah.
for you to share your story and how you arrived here.
Yeah. I love the way you said misconceptions and definition in the same sentence because I don't really think people have a misconception of what discipline is. I think there are just have, there are two very distinct definitions of what they are. And depending on the definition that you embrace will absolutely change, your experience of it. So, yeah, the typical way people think about discipline is it's all about performance. It's all about behavior, getting ourselves to behave. We want to be able to get ourselves to show up, and it's all about that. So it's all about control and typically as well about controlling like the external validation
Yeah.
that we will get as a result of that. Like it also, like I said, it's not just what it is, it's about being able to consistently be able to behave in a way that we want to do it. The definition often speaks to how we get ourselves to do it. Say the definition by Merriam-Webster says discipline is to punish and penalize for the sake of perfecting more enforcing obedience and perfecting moral character. Um, I don't know about you, but that doesn't feel very inspiring to me. And I don't think it's going to lead to this beautiful life experience that we're all wanting to create. And for decades, that's where I was living from. And so often I would just bounce back and forth. I think a lot of us have this love-hate relationship with love discipline. We want it, because we want all those results. We want that and we think that when we get the results, then we'll finally be enough and then we'll have the life that we want to lead. But we only know this way of like punishing and controlling ourselves and beating the crap out of ourselves in order to get ourselves there. And, so sometimes when we're enough pain from the result of our behavior, we can get ourselves to do it, and then eventually when we start feeling good about ourselves, we're just like, gosh, I just enough, and then we go back and forth and we don't have any real sustainability. Or not only that, is it winds up feeling out of control with ourselves, which actually affects how safe we feel within ourselves and our inner trust, you know, and obviously including like we attach it to, as it said, even in that definition, moral character, we attach it to, how good of a person we are as to whether or not we can get ourselves to do that. And so I was in it was a really challenging time of my life. And I got this message from Spirit, actually, that said, discipline will give you a beautiful life. And it came through almost like a throwaway. But I was like, whoa, something about it really hit home. And it came from that word beautiful, because the word beautiful did not seem to fit with my experience of discipline. I could see that it would get me results, that it would get me maybe that perfect body I was always striving for, that would give me the success, and the financial if I could just make it happen. But by then I had been struggling with it so much that it was like a beautiful life meant something completely different. It was coming from the inside. It was a way you were going to, experience your life. And so that's what set me on this journey. actually. So I'm getting to the definition that you said, because that was one of the first things I did, was I wanted to understand, how could discipline give me a beautiful life? And so I looked the word up. I love playing with definitions. And that's when I found the definition from Merriam-Webster that was like, okay, yep, I recognize that. No wonder that is not going to lead me to a beautiful life. To punish and penalize yourself for enforcing your obedience and perfecting your moral character. It just, you know, so I had to dig a little deeper. And that's when I stumbled on the root word, that it comes from the word discipulus, which means to learn. And that hit me like, I was like, I mean, of course, I knew that in a way because, we have our disciplines in science and this and that, but I never really, now that I was searching under this context, I never really thought about it in terms of discipline, which means that self-discipline means to learn the self, learn and understand and really get to know yourself, your inner landscape, you know, so that you can eventually, come to master that. The more we know and understand, the more mastery we have over whatever that is, so, and then in the same bent, I made the connection between that word disciple, which really means student. But whenever I hear the word disciple, it kind of makes you feel like, oh, that's a devoted student. That's coming from a place of they love the subject, you know, that
Yeah.
they're following, that they're discovering. There's a certain amount of um, respect and honor and dedication when you are a disciple. So now it shifts this whole way of looking at discipline, where it's like we become these devoted students of ourselves from this place of love, respect, and being, really, curious about who we are. And from this deep inner belief in our innate goodness and worthiness. And that changes everything. You can see it. It's like one definition is about controlling our behavior for external validation. And the other is this beautiful journey of coming to learn and know and understand yourself to a point where aligned behavior just becomes the natural expression of who you are. And that set me off on this journey of, okay, so how do we do that? How do we do that? Yeah. And it's
Wow,
a
that
journey.
is beautiful. I could listen to you speak all day. That was such a beautiful journey of how you went
Oh,
from discipline being something like structured and you punish yourself if you don't do something right to something that is beautiful and like a devotion to what you're doing and yourself and learning yourself. So
yeah.
that
And
that
to
leads me
your potential, I was going to say,
your
because it just
potential.
with the words you were saying, it's like all of a sudden I was like, yep, that's what it's it's a it's honoring and falling in love with your potential.
I love that.
And in my TEDx talk, I mention this, all my life I grew up, not all my life, especially growing up in school. Over and over again, my teachers would say, Elizabeth is not living up to her potential. And I didn't realize at the time that I was dealing with significant ADHD symptoms and things like that. And I was getting that even when I was getting straight A's sometimes. Like,
Wow.
what are they, what are they seeing? And I was trying, and I was, um, as I got older, I struggled to it's like I'm smart enough, they tested me and apparently, I don't like labels, but, they decided that I was gifted. And so, but yet I was struggling when the more you had to like keep everything together and do all of
Mhm.
that, that's when I started to be like, so you're trying and you're doing all that. And when you're trying, and apparently there's this standard, I don't like the phrase living up to your potential. It's as if it's a destination, like it's this level of achievement that you're supposed to hit. And clearly I wasn't hitting it, And so it makes you feel like you're not enough.
Yeah.
And so, and how this ties into the loving discipline is because when we start to do that and we come to know who we truly are, all the parts of ourselves, includes all those kind of the maladaptive parts that are just struggling to try to figure out from old, you know, coping mechanisms, trying to get along and survive. But it also means getting to know our core, powerful inner essence, our divine consciousness, and our being. And so it's inappropriate to say living up to your potential. We are potential. Potential is the infinite possibility of who we are. So I like to say we want to free ourselves to live from and into that magnificent potential that is who we are. It's not some, goalpost that we're shooting for. It's a way of being. It's actually being the essence of who we truly are, that full magnificence. Yeah. And that changed everything for me too, because that was a big part of that was driving that need to be more disciplined in the classic sense. We're not reaching our potential, so we have to be more disciplined, you know?
Yep. That's something that so many people my age hear today too. Like I know I'm in high school right
Oh,
now and people are like even if teachers aren't saying that to you specifically cuz I go to a school where there's a lot of smart people, but internally we feel like we have to pressure ourselves to live up to that potential. But I love how you just completely reframed what potential is and it's that is our truest most authentic self that we're aligned with. So
yeah.
becoming that is the most powerful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And we want to, and that's what the work does. The better we get to know ourselves and understand the inner, like I said, the inner landscape, all the mechanisms that are driving, our behavior, because it's the loving discipline method is also at its core about integration. Yes, we are this human being, but we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And we like to throw that phrase around, but very rarely do we actually live from that place. That takes full integration. That means, so it's not about getting rid of the ego. I just see the ego as it's our human persona, our human identity. And with all that comes with that, this body, I'm this role, I'm this, and we are here. We came here to live this human experience. So we don't want to get rid of that part of ourselves, but we are so much more than that. And when we start to struggle, that's what happens. When we start being afraid, when we start trying to control everything, it's because we've forgotten or disconnected from who we truly are. We can never really be truly disconnected from it, but we experience disconnection because we've forgotten. And we're trying to live and survive as this separate human entity. And now it's like it's you and me. And now in that, how am I going to navigate this where I wind up being okay and I'm enough and so it's all about really getting to know and understand the mechanism that is not just this human being, but this human being having a spiritual experience, the spiritual being, having a human experience and learning how to integrate all of those parts of ourselves and bringing them back into the whole under the guidance, under the leadership of that higher self, because that higher self doesn't come from fear. It comes from love. It knows that we are so much more. It knows that at all times, no matter what, all is well. It is pure love. It is that unconditional love that honestly, as humans, we can't truly achieve it. We only can achieve that by connection and integrating that higher self. And from that place of inner safety and unconditional love, now these other parts that from a younger age learned that it wasn't safe to be their authentic self and it wasn't safe to express these parts of ourselves, and now have learned these maladaptive roles of trying to protect ourselves, all that. The more we connect with that higher self, the more those parts of ourselves can relax, let those unhealthy roles go and return to that free, beautiful, authentic expression of who, they originally were. Because we are this human expression as well, but it should come from alignment with that higher self and just be free, not be thinking about which part is expressing that or anything like that. It just becomes the natural part of who you are. And it doesn't mean we don't make mistakes. The higher self doesn't care about making mistakes. The higher self cares about growth and expansion and learning from experience. And so you'll make all kinds of mistakes, but our actions will be still, even in those mistakes, coming from that alignment.
Yeah, that's just beautiful. And I have so many more questions that I want to go into, but I think that we should start with the ability to learn yourself. We've talked about this a lot, like knowing yourself. That is how you go from your human level where you can be stressed out and having experiences that may be lower than your higher self. You connect to your higher self by knowing yourself and going back and doing the work to, you know, like you said, when we're
Mm.
children, our parents make us feel unsafe to express a specific need or a thing that we like to do. But learning ourselves can help integrate that. So my question is, how do we practically, what are some practical tips or tools or things that we can do to actually learn ourselves better at that deeper level?
Yeah, well, there's all sorts of ways that you can do that. And I also encourage people to figure that out for themselves as
Yeah.
well, because one of the beautiful things about this is we are all unique. And what works for me might not work for you. And that's part of coming to know yourself, because that's another thing, another way that we can kind of shame ourselves and beat ourselves up, because someone can say, do this and you'll get this. And then you try it. And it's like, with whatever's going on with your parts or whatever's going on with this, you're like, okay, that's
Yeah.
not that's not me. And that's okay. So I want to start off by saying it's the first thing you can do is embrace this new definition. That's the first thing. And that's a practice. If loving discipline is learning, then how do we learn? We learn from practicing. We learn from experiencing. We don't learn from just stuffing more information up into our head. That often gives us just this false sense of progress. Like, oh, we love those aha moments. And oh, I'm just going to read, we're not, we're not feeling very aligned in any of our choices. But oh, if we get like an idea, we're like, oh, now we've got it all figured out. But then as soon as we try to, we'll try to apply it for a day or two. And as soon as it gets hard, you know,
Yeah.
we're just like, where's the next fix? Where's the next aha fix? I need
Yeah.
to read another book or something. So, so it's a big component to loving discipline is being willing to practice it. So embrace the definition of it. Notice when you're coming. Awareness is the first step of any kind of transformation. No matter how you're approaching this kind of work, whether it's loving discipline or anything, I think that's pretty universal. And so start noticing when you're not. When you're freaking out, trying to control yourself or control your external environment, and just pause and I like to put my hand on my heart, because that kind of brings me back in. It's like, okay, because I'm focusing out here. Notice, like, even when you're in your head, it's like energy is going,
Yeah.
it's like you're scattered. Everything's all out there. I like to put my hand on my heart and go, okay, come back home. Come back home. What's going on? Assuming the best in ourselves. Look, you're you're this beautiful being. Okay, why? And not like, why are you doing that? But like, why? Why are you feeling this way? How is that, and how is that making you react? And what do you, let me see, can I get in touch with what I really need right now? What am I really afraid of? It's about connecting and asking questions. It's about getting curious. It's this beautiful, one of the key components. Again, there's a lot, but you start to see that they all fall under this one beautiful and it becomes very intuitive. It compassionate curiosity, no judgment. It's no, it's like this is you, we need to create a beautiful, safe environment for ourselves to understand because we aren't perfect. We have to understand that the human aspects of us means that we are capable of things that could be considered very evil. We are all capable of that. And we have to learn how to be okay with that. We're taught so much that's bad that we can't even look at any time we have like a negative or a greedy or a selfish, so-called selfish thought. We're like, we can't, it blocks us from really connecting and getting to know ourselves and working with that, being that fully integrated being. That's okay. That's a part of being human. We just don't want those parts being in control, being the leader. But they can be they can be allowed and accepted and be part of the whole because they are. You're not getting rid of them. So how we do that is by bringing that into the whole self under the leadership of the higher self, where and it's interesting because once we're not resisting them, the saying, what you resist persists. And when you talk to people who are really into really problematic patterns and behaviors that are not only unacceptable to others, but unacceptable to themselves, the harsher they judge that, the harsher we judge it, harsher we try to fight against and control it. You ever noticed how, like, to resist something, that doesn't mean when we let something be, it actually usually softens its strength against us. To resist something, we actually have to stay focused on it, have to stay pushing against it. Think of how now all of our energy goes against pushing against this instead of just saying, I'm just going to let this go. And I know who I want to be. I know who I truly am. I know what's in alignment with my core essence, not my just the human characteristics. They're not a reflection of who you are. Now, suddenly, I like to use the analogy of like a beach ball, because you can do this with emotions too. If you think of like resisting emotions, but picture yourself in the ocean and whatever it is that you're resisting is in this big, giant beach ball. And you don't want it to come up. So now just think of how much effort that takes to shove that down, to not have that come up. I mean, how can you do anything else? You can't enjoy the ocean. You can't be in it. The more you do it, the more tired you get. Eventually, you're not going to be able to do it anymore. And it's going to erupt, and then we see it blow up like that. It's like, how fast can I get to the beach ball again and shove it back down again? And that becomes our entire existence. Versus if we can create enough internal safety that we can say, no, I'm going to let it go. And we can sit with the discomfort of how it feels when it flies up. It can get really intense. It usually just falls back down. And if we don't touch it, it's just floating on the ocean. And now we can watch it. We can observe it. We can just let it be, So I don't know, we kind of keep going on different tangents. You're talking about how we can start to do that. I would just say, yeah, awareness, embracing the definition, notice when you're not, start cultivating that curiosity towards yourself. That's the definition of it. Become a devoted student of, what's going on.
So beautiful. And I love everything that you just shared, especially the last point about resistance and how,
Mm,
we always try to push down things that we're uncomfortable with and that are outside of our comfort zones and things that we don't want to deal with. But whenever we let them rise up and then, like you said, use awareness and then compassionate curiosity, not judging whatever comes up, but just watching it. That's when it can slowly,
yeah.
deflate or like go away. Cause yeah, or something happens with our brain where if we try to push something away, it's the only thing that we obsess about and think about.
Well, it takes energy to do that,
Yeah.
whereas if we just, if we, and the other thing, because this is all about really integrating and becoming whole, and living from that whole integrated place, we're disconnecting from ourselves when we're judging and harshly, criticizing, deeming a part of ourselves unacceptable, cannot exist. We're cutting ourselves off. We become fragmented. We can't be that that whole integrated self, and it becomes all those parts of us. It's all the parts of us too. Um, don't feel safe. The part that is being totally ostracized, and also the other parts because they feel like they're not okay. They can't live in coexistence with these parts of ourselves. So it creates this internal battlefield within ourselves where, people say self-sabotage. I feel like I'm fighting myself. Well, in a way we are. We are not because we're trying to tear ourselves down, because each part has a different idea of what it needs in order to express itself, and they're contradictory to each other, and they're not coming from that aligned connection with self, so they are contradictory,
Mhm.
and they're usually, a lot of them are based on coping mechanisms that we developed at a very early age. And I talk about this. I have a video on parts work, and it's I lost my train of thought. Let me see, where was I?
Parts work.
Yes, but what was I talking about with the parts work?
You were you mentioned that you have, we were talking about how, like, with resistance and then you have, like, things that go against each other, and your inside have a
Yes,
conflict.
yes, yes. So we have these parts that are conflicting with themselves. Oh, I was talking about how when they're created.
Yes.
Yeah. So the thing is there these parts of ourselves take on these maladaptive roles, sometimes at a very young age. That when they learned, oh, it's not safe to express myself this way. So instead, they kind of contort themselves, and now they take on this role where they're going to, um, I don't know, either get what we need by being this other way that is much less authentic, or protecting by keeping this other part of ourselves away. And but whatever age we were, that when that was created, because they're disconnected from the self, because they're kind of they're just kind of running rogue. They're
Yeah.
blind to everything else going on. They're just focused on, this is what I have to do to to be okay. Their methods are outdated. They don't fit anymore. They don't even realize that, we are capable of taking care of ourselves now. We're not in the same situations that we were
Mhm.
anymore. They don't. And that's why it's so important that we actually allow them to just be and connect with them and create that safe environment. And we help them finally come to learn and understand that, oh, I don't, because they don't wanna be doing that role. They don't. They're doing it because they have to. And the truth is, because of that inner battle and all the self-judgment and everything, it's a very thankless job. They're not being appreciated. And so that's another thing that we can do when we get into this deeper parts work, which is a big part of my work too, is that we start by just connecting with them and holding them from that higher self. We learn how to connect to our higher self and what that feels like. And it's all those things that you probably would think of. It's this place of calm and clarity and unconditional love, no judgment and curiosity and just, compassion and no agenda, no anything. It's you had in one of the topics that you were thinking of, maybe I'm discussing, is about like compassionate redirection.
Mhm.
And, how do we cultivate that or whatever? And I would say I would never start from redirection, because that's trying to put
Change it.
on like a pretty little bow on control. And these parts of ourselves can sense that and feel that, and they don't feel accepted for just being who they really are. And it's like, and we have to first establish trust with that part, every person, every part, which are kind of just these little aspects of the person, wants to be seen and validated and understood and held and feel like they're okay. They're going to be accepted just the way they are. That doesn't mean that they're perfect either, but that but that whatever's going on doesn't make them unworthy. So, yes, eventually we guide these parts through from the higher self, but the higher self doesn't have an agenda about that. It can't come from an agenda because that shifts the energy. And that energy is not pure self energy. That's another part that's trying to manage that other part and fix it because it kind of doesn't think it should be the way it's being. So we start by just connecting with it and appreciating its innate goodness. It's trying to help. And thank you. Oh my gosh, that must be such an tireless, exhausting job that you've been doing. You're feeling, yeah, you think that we are not safe unless this is what we do. You know, and you thank it for that because that's what's going on. That really is what's going on. And you start to feel like this enormous compassion for that part of yourself that is fighting so hard instead of just being upset because it's actually not helping anymore. At one time, that was the best you could do and very well may have saved your life or at the very least really got you what you needed in that moment, got you through. And so you start to have enormous compassion that it never got that it could be any other way. And it sacrificed its authentic expression to become this other more maladaptive role that it never wanted to, so you start there and then you start asking it like, what do you really need? What are you really afraid of? What do you really need? What do you want me to know about you? What do you want me to know? You get curious. You start to get to know all of these parts of yourself. And as you get to know them and create that beautiful safe space, they start to surrender and they start to reintegrate back into the whole. And they naturally surrender to the guidance. It's not the control of the higher self, to the guidance and alignment of the higher self, because that's the way our system is really designed. It got a little conditioned to be it got a little wonky growing up because most of us and parents and and society and everything, we're not understanding that. And we're not coming from that place. And we're all concerned about, we think we're even helping our children because we want them to perform.
Mhm.
We want them to perform and know how to behave and achieve so that they will be able to have a successful life and be okay. And and we still have that tape in our head that that's what's going to lead to this beautiful life. And yet, if you talk to most people, we're still not making the connection. That's like, it doesn't quite work that way,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because yesterday my mom and I, we were talking about, like, how parents raise their children, and she was like,
Oh,
there's no rule book on how to raise a perfect child." And I was like, "Yeah, that's crazy," because I think a lot of people think that, "Oh, I need to not allow my child to rely on me on a few things so that they grow up to be strong and independent on their own." But in reality, when you're a child and you're like that, I think from my experience and my ideas of what I've read is if you're a parent, you should allow your child to do what they feel called to do, and you should be there for them, and then they will naturally, as they grow up, develop into that independence. But I think a lot of people are scared that if they don't teach their children to be independent and non-reliant at an early age, that they will not grow up to be that way, when in reality, they're just depriving their child of that need. Is that right?
well, the way I think of it is the role of the parent. And this is what we're doing by connecting with our higher self. I like to call my higher self my higher evolved parent. We're reparenting ourselves in many
Yeah.
ways through this work. Yeah, I think self-actualization is the goal of life. The only thing I don't like about saying that is if you look that up, that talks about um, living up to your potential.
Mhm. Mm.
I like to see it as being free to live from and into, to become, the full expression of that in magnificent infinite potential.
Yeah.
And which your potential is only rooted in your authenticity. You can't be your best self by fulfilling other people's ideas of what they think you should be. So that kind of just makes that. That said, as parents, we are and I wish I knew this when I was a parent too. I didn't know this, but we really are the custodians, the guardians of that beautiful, magnificent potential. And yes, here's this little spiritual being that came into this world to have a human experience. So how do we, we need to teach them how to stay safe in this physical world, and how to navigate this integrated life, because they are coming into this life connected and integrated. They learn from us, unfortunately, from our ignorance that, oh, that's not okay. That's not safe. Because we are so dependent as babies on our caretakers to survive, we have no way of fulfilling a single need without those caretakers. And that's a gradual process of being able to release, that need until we can learn to fulfill those needs for ourselves. It's a long, long process. So we are beautifully designed to be exquisitely attuned to every little thing that gives us that connection that they call it attachment theory, that brings that attachment, that connection to our caretaker, and what gets us, disconnection, detachment, judgment, not okay, and that is deeply rooted, and it's connected to our fight or flight and our survival mechanisms, because it is life or death in those moments. If our parent does not care about us, we're screwed. And our being knows that. And so, but the thing is that now sets us up to where, every time we're learning that, we're creating those parts. It's like, oh, that I don't, mom gets really angry and, or loses it. Nothing's more scary to a child when a parent totally loses control, because it's like, if the parent the adult in the room isn't in control, oh my gosh, and it's why children when you've got major discipline problems and children are running the show, it's sad really, because they're getting what they want, but they're not really getting what they want. And they're certainly not getting what they need, because parents are supposed to be creating the environment, the safe container for them to learn and grow, so that they eventually they feel just like with the container of our higher self. The more we really feel held by that, the safer we are with our parts and everything to go out into the world and take risks and try things and do whatever. It's okay. We know we're okay because we can always come back home. We're always safe. But they're not. They have no container. They have no boundaries. No, we need boundaries. Boundaries are what let us. It's like boundaries, even with ourselves, say, yeah, no, I'm not going to let that happen, because that's not, that's not good for me. It's not about controlling you. It's like, if that shows up, it's like, yeah, I don't accept that in my space. And this is what I'm going to do. I control myself in order to protect myself, my well-being. And so, parents need to create that container for themselves, for the child, and the child also, because they're exquisitely tuned to them. We're not only teaching them how to navigate the world, we are teaching them how to see themselves. We need to be the mirror of their worth, their infinite potential, their innate goodness, their ability to become and do anything they want to be, their innate worth that is completely separate of anything they do. We mirror that to them first. And that's what is building that container, that safety, until eventually, the more we do that, they begin Now they start to take it on from themselves. And when we have that, when that part of ourselves is whole, we do need to challenge. I don't know. No, excuse me. No, we don't need to challenge them. We need to allow them to explore because it's the same thing. It's like, yeah, it can be overly harsh where it's just like, you need to learn, you need to grow, you're not being, da, da, da. But there's a way of doing that. Again, if you're not coming from that beautiful place and the child doesn't really feel like they have that safe place to go and figure all that out for themselves and knowing that they can always come home, that's traumatic. That's going to backfire. That's going to create a whole bunch of those protection mechanisms in innumerable ways. Everyone's different, but you're now struggling to survive out there. It doesn't produce that fully free, actualized being. On the same note, if you do everything for the child, then they're not allowed to develop their own inner strength. We need to provide the safe container for them to start to stretch their muscles, build their muscles so that they can get stronger and stronger. And then they have the inner strength. Until then, we need to be the inner strength, but we should never replace it because now the child isn't fully developed. There's a lot of us running around that did not get the inner development that we need. It's a long process to become this fully actualized human being that is fully capable, that has self-mastery over itself. That comes from practice, but the parent needs to provide the safe environment in order for that, to happen. And so that's how I see parenting. There's a lot of parents who don't have that themselves, who are trying to guide other ones. And it can show up as well in how they discipline. Both extremes are abusive. They're unhealthy. They're not for the child. You can have that extreme authoritarianism that is absolutely about control, and that squashes that child's ability to be able to develop and express, what they came here to become. On the same note, if you have a parent that just like is always overwhelmed, is like, I can't handle, I can't handle you. You know what? Go ahead. Fine. Go ahead. Play the video games. Have the cookie, whatever. I'm just going to, that's great. It's actually watching you. That's perfect. That means that I don't have to deal with it because I can't handle you. That's enormous neglect, and the child is also not getting the structure, learning the boundaries, learning, and again, not being able to come from a safe, and that's not a safe environment. That's an environment where the parent is letting all sorts of things happen that are not cultivating that empowered little human being and that it's that inner strength, that inner self-mastery that creates that safety in the world, that says, no matter what's going on, I'm going to be able to handle it. That's the ultimate safety. We want to try to control our circumstances because we're underdeveloped inside, thinking, we put all our effort into controlling that because we know we're not capable of dealing it. So we better make sure that nothing ever happens. But when we actually reverse that and come from an inside out approach, now it's like, yeah, I own who I am. I have full mastery over myself, and I know who I am, and I know that even anything I don't know, I can learn it, and I know that no matter what, it never touches my value, my worth, whatever. I know that whatever comes my way, I'll be able to handle it. Now, can you sense the difference in the internal state? Because otherwise you're always kind of wondering. It's like, okay, I feel safe in this moment because I'm controlling the external circumstances, but you can't control the external circumstances. So you never feel truly safe. And it's that safety that allows us to be that free, full expression of who we are, which is an enormous part of living from and into that potential. So that's how I see even the role of parenting, that we're facilitating that as best we can. Unfortunately, if you're a parent out there, it starts by, okay, cultivate it, understand that that's the game. And I would encourage you to start working on yourself, you know,
Yeah.
because that's where it starts.
Wow. Thank you so much for taking me through that whole journey in this conversation. That just opened my eyes to so many different things and perspectives. And I want to dive deeper into like the two sides of it, like being in complete control of everything. Cause I think that the parenting different types also apply to what we do with ourselves and a lot of different things. So if we
Sure.
control everything and try to micromanage everything in our mind compared to just going with the flow with everything, what is the good balance between taking action and allowing things to happen naturally? Or should we just let allow things allow being allowed to happen naturally and all that?
Yeah, in terms of parenting, like I said, no. I mean, because we're here to really help keep them safe and help develop them. That's a very active, that's a big job. It's just not in the way that we think that we, we're supposed to do it. When we're disciplining or trying to control our children from that older or the more traditional, let's say, because not the older, it's the ancient root meaning that is the core of loving discipline, but that more traditional way of doing it. Again, it's all about performing and getting those external results. And so it becomes when the child isn't doing something that we want them to do, or they're acting up, when we're tired and we're exhausted, we just need to get the kids out the door, when we just need to, get them to bed, when we just need them to do their homework, it's all we want is to get them to do what we want them to do. And then we start like bulldozing them, strong arming them, threatening them, giving them whatever. We start to use those more coercive methods to try to get them to behave. Remember, self discipline is about learning to come to understand, to see, and um, fully know the self. But when we're disciplining our child, it means that we want to know and understand the child too, and especially like believing in their innate goodness. And it's a practice too, because it's hard, because we're trying to get things done, and we are in this physical world, and there's things that need to be done, and so it is a balance. There's people who are brilliant on this topic. There's a woman named Becky Kennedy that I just adore. Yeah, check out her work, because she's all about parenting. And that's not necessarily, I'm about parenting, our adult selves. But yeah, it's coming to, understanding like, oh, why are they behaving that way? And acknowledging that, not again, fighting against that, not judging that. No, when we judge a child for their behavior, that's where, again, oh, I'm bad. I'm not being good. I'm not being, love might be withdrawn. Those are the experiences that form those fragmented, distorted inner parts, because we start trying, um, instead of, of course, it's not always about being the full, as children, if they fully express whatever who they are, all the time, we have to help them understand, what's appropriate and this and that. But it's also that it is safe for them to feel whatever it is that they're feeling. And how do we help them learn to navigate that? That we so much of the time, we don't really teach children how to regulate their emotions. We learn that their emotions aren't good, and you better not, and I don't want to see that emotion, you better,
Not
and
cry
yeah, yeah. Or even just be angry, or,
or throw a
sometimes even
tantrum.
being joyful. Sometimes even, oh, we're too joyful in the moment. And then we learn, oh, well, that wasn't good. That wasn't the right, we don't put it in context as a child.
Yeah,
We just know, oh, my joy and exuberance isn't okay. And then, whoa, we just kind of shrunk a little bit. And so it's all about guiding and helping the child understand themselves and come to know themselves and come to master themselves, so that they have full ownership as they grow up. They have full ownership of who they are, and mastery over their mind, their body, their thoughts, so that they are fully capable.
totally.
They're the
Yeah,
full
so
expression of who they are. They're free. They're
they're
free. They're free
free.
to be now whatever they want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you were going to redesign the way that people teach children self-discipline and discipline in schools, how specifically would you, like, go about redesigning that? Like, how would you teach them to do that?
Yeah. I I would embrace the loving discipline, journey and definition and reinforce it's really there's a loving discipline is a method, but it's also an approach. And the approach is more like the whole idea of it, the whole philosophy, the whole, and the methods
Yeah.
is more like, oh, all the tools and, you know, how we actually achieve that. And that includes reinforcing that I'm not saying that goals aren't important and achieving isn't important because we're here to create, that's what we're here to do. But it depends on where it's coming from and what the end objective is. If we're trying to prove our worth or, you know, uh, get validation or acceptance through that, I would encourage them, away from that, and that it's help them learn to come to know and understand themselves, why they do the way they do, help them understand and create a deep knowing of their innate goodness. And I would also teach a growth mindset, because if we're all about learning, we have to have a growth mindset that even if we think, oh, we're talented or this or that, it's very easy for us to latch on to those things and think that they're a part of our value and worth. And they're really not. They're just expressions and parts of who we are. They are gifts, you know but the truth is, science has proven over and over again that that ability, that growth mindset matters way more for our success than our natural abilities. I've seen it over and
Phew.
over again. Yeah, it's um because when you have a fixed mindset, so say like I was tested and found gifted, and a lot of people, oh, they think you're really smart. It's like, oh, okay. And people are like valuing you for that, and you're getting accolades, and it becomes like it's part of your identity. It's part of how you're like, oh, okay, this is my value and worth in the world. I am smart. Okay. And then you come up against something where you're like, oh, I just found out I'm not as smart as I thought I was. Right? You're like, okay, if that's attached to your identity, that's very scary, because you just found out that, okay, my intelligence or how smart I am is attached to my identity and it's fixed and finite, which means when I come up against the limit of it, it's eventually, I'm going to expose the fact that it's not enough. I'm not enough. So when we have a fixed mindset, all of our energy starts going towards protecting, not exposing that not enoughness. So a person with a fixed mindset would much rather take a class where, oh, I got an easy A. I love it because they can prove and show the world, yep, see, I am smart. See, it reaffirms their value, reaffirms their identity that I am, much rather than that. Whereas someone with a growth mindset would be like, man, I got a D on that class, but that kicked my butt. And oh my gosh, I loved learning that. If they were loving learning that, they wouldn't not take that and say, oh, I can't do that because I'm not good enough at that. That'll expose that I'm not good enough. They'd be like, I love that. But man, that kicked my butt. I got to take that again. I don't care if I take that 3 times. I'm going to keep doing it until I learn that. And the growth mindset knows that wherever we are right now is just a jumping off point, because that we with focus and putting in the time and the energy and the effort, we can learn and become and achieve anything we want. That's what the growth mindset is. So you can see the person with the fixed mindset, even if they were really smart, even if they were enormously talented, they're only relying on that baseline. And as soon as they don't want to ever do anything that is going to push them up against the limit, they won't take the risks that they need to really break out beyond that. And because your talent, your uh your gifts are often just starting off points. And so the person who maybe they didn't have a natural talent, but they loved it and they devoted to and they stuck with it and they come up and pretty soon and then they just keep going because they love it. And they know that they can just keep getting better and better and better. They become a master of it because that's what mastery is. It's through practice. A master isn't born a master. A master is created through ongoing practice. And oftentimes, and these ones, they may be doing what they do, but they're only going to be doing it at that particular level. So they get real, maybe good at that level, while the other person that only had, yeah, I learned that actually big time through acting class. Yeah, it was really cool because I actually had, I had a lot of innate talent. And I've been told that at a young age. And I went to acting class and I could see the first time I went to acting class because I hadn't really been to acting class. And there was one particular student that I really kind of noticed was like, oh, I didn't think he was very talented. A little bit of judgment. I wasn't trying to judge. It wasn't, I thought he was an awesome person. Loved him as a person, but I just noticed it was like, and I had a fixed mindset about that. It wasn't him. It was, I had a fixed mindset about that. I believed you had to have a certain amount of innate talent or else, and how many of us get our dreams destroyed by having someone with a fixed mindset tell us, I think you better find something else to do. And it's sad. But I watched as the months went on. I was like, oh, he really got good. And not only that, he started writing. And I talked to him about it too, because he started with this script and he's like, it was really bad. It was really bad. But that was okay because he's like, I was going to learn, and he just kept learning. He kept asking for people's advice. He was open even to constructive criticism. It was like, it didn't bother him. And he's just like, yeah, I'm just going to learn. And he wound up actually even getting into Steppenwolf in Chicago, which is a theater company where August Osage County, which is a movie with Meryl Streep and, like Tony Award-winning plays and a lot of famous people like come out of that. He got into that. He went to UCLA. He got his master's in screenwriting and but he also created this amazing film called Holding On that created this movement about his friend in high school who had committed suicide. So it's this beautiful movement to help people about mental health. Anyways, holy cow. All because, and this is the thing about having the fixed mindset. Like, and you and I have talked about perfectionism too. Like, it's highly correlated with that fixed mindset because you're trying to protect exposing the not enoughness. You're trying to protect how people perceive you. And so it's like, oh my gosh, every criticism, it's like, oh my God, they're realizing I'm not enough. They're realizing I'm not good enough. You're afraid you're not good enough. Every criticism is telling you you're not good enough. And it's like, you start to being afraid. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know, because you don't believe that you can learn anything that you can become. So back to what would I do to teach? That's fundamental, obviously, because it's teaching the growth mindset is teaching that you are potential. So, and there's a lot of information out there about how we can learn that. A growth mindset can be learned. And so I would be teaching that and helping our children understand that it really is about them coming to know and understand themselves and to be the best expression of who they are, and that they can't do that by trying to fit in. I love Brené Brown. I don't know if you know her, but
I do.
yeah, I love her. And, just how the difference between real belonging and fitting in.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you can't fit in. Fitting is sacrificing who you really are, contorting yourself in order to be accepted by other people. And when we really, and belonging is when, we are accepted and loved precisely because we are who we are. And that's what even loving discipline is doing for ourselves too, is learning how to do that for ourselves. And it's not like, oh, I understand the concept of it. That's where the method versus the approach. For a lot of us, if we've struggled with that for decades. That takes it's the practice. So we understand and we embrace and we get devoted to this new way of living life, this new way of interacting with ourselves. It's transforming our relation, how we relate to ourselves, and therefore also how we relate to everyone and everything is all coming from
How we
this
relate.
inner place.
Wow, that is mind blowing. I
Mm.
I love the idea behind adopting a growth mindset because I want to put this in like right now we have AI in our world and we have social media and we have all these different things influencing
Mhm.
us and people are constantly like trying to get validation off of social media or they're going to AI with their life problems and trying to get advice and stuff. But I'm curious how you see that impacting people's growth mindset and ability to like be okay not
Hmm.
being perfect.
Well, that's interesting. That's a really interesting question. Um, I've never really thought of AI in terms of needing to be perfect. What I Yeah, so I'm like, wow, that's you got me thinking on that. Um, what I will say is this. I think this new era with their AI, just like any technology, has potential to be amazingly positive or creating a lot of problems for humanity, and it's going to be up to us. And I've got an interesting way that my loving discipline fits into this. We are coming from an age of information, and I believe we are heading into the age of truth. And a lot of truths are going to be exposed and are coming to the surface right now, which is very unsettling. But it's all about kind of, if you think about it as the shadow, it's all reflecting the inner work, these shadow parts of ourselves that we can't accept. It's like, okay, it's, this is um, part of, I believe, an opportunity for us as humans to up level to the next level. And we have to be able to discern that truth. AI is very interesting because, and other technologies are making it very, very difficult for us now to know what's true and what's not. We know it used to be seeing is believing, no longer true. There's no shortage of information, but what information is true? It's being so manipulated and distorted. And exactly. So there's a lot of talk even about implants and this and that for us to be able to almost like compete with AI. Like we as humans have to become better computers, be able to think. That is not the biggest gift of who we are. This is calling us not to become better computers, but to become better humans. It's time for us to up level to the next level. Science is finding out things about this mechanism that they still don't even understand it, but they know there's more. We have the pineal gland, we have the chakras, we are these beautiful, I don't even know if it's just energetic beings. We are pure consciousness. They're starting to see like, yeah, what we think does affect reality. They don't know the exact way yet. It's like science is starting to catch up to all the spirituality that is going on. I don't think we should mess with these mechanisms. I think we need to learn how to tap into our higher consciousness. We need to learn how to integrate so we become better, fuller human beings. Human beings were not meant to just be this physical self. We were meant to be this beautiful, powerful integration. And we don't know how to do that. I don't know exactly how to do that either. I'm never professing. I'm just realizing the journey and am committed to the journey and am committed to helping everyone else. Now, I think my loving discipline method and approach is evolving for me into becoming this mission to help as many people get on board with that journey and so that we can evolve together into this next level of human beings, so we can face this new age as the fully functional beings that we're meant to be. That is how we are going to get through this next era with grace and, you know, with creating something really magnificent and beautiful. So, and AI, in terms of like being able to help us, AI can be a huge help in that. I use AI a lot, and uh, it's for each and every one of us to learn. And that takes being willing to pay attention to yourself. It's all part of that loving discipline journey. When am I actually delegating things to AI that are things that I know that I should be doing myself and are interfering with my own personal growth and expansion in what I need to do? And and it's hard to discern that from the other noise of what everyone else is telling you to do too, because every person is going to be different. And then, and then using it for those things that are actually freeing you up to be more of that full expression of who you want to be and what you want to create in the world. AI cannot be creative. It's a really good computer, but and it can mimic it. It'll blow your socks off and you'll swear that it's creative, but our creativity doesn't come from even our brains. It comes from our divine consciousness. Even take someone like Nikola Tesla or whatever. When he didn't as brilliant as he was, he did not intellectually create the things that he created. They came in a flash, fully pictured, fully, he had the intellect to be able to understand it and to be able to bring it about. But the creative ideas, and for most of us, that's what happens. When we try to strong arm ourselves and force ourselves to make things happen creatively, it usually is more limited. It's not the full expression of what it could be. We normally are just like, oh my gosh, where did that? We don't know where it comes from. But we are divine consciousness and we are connected to the conscious field as well. And these things, we are more interactive, I believe, with each other than we even, and more connected to each other than we have any idea. And I think that's what this next part, AI can free us up to really be able to even explore that. Maybe it's going to be to where we don't even have to worry so much about producing for the sake of survival, but freeing ourselves up to fully explore what it means to be an evolved human, because we're only tapping into a fraction of our potential. Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. You shared so many invaluable insights that have just like blown things through the roof that I'm like still processing as I'm like
Yeah, me
taking
too. I
time.
do. I think about this stuff all the time. It's like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
it's
It's
amazing, and, I also read somewhere, I think it was in Mastery by, like, Robert Greene, but Einstein, when he
right
came
on.
up with the theory of relativity, he saw it in a flash when he was, like, on a bus or something, but, yeah, it's so
There
cool
you
how
go.
everything comes from inside and that we're going from I love that you said we're going from the age of information to the age of truth now, and, like, a whole new world is open now with all these possibilities that we have, so I just wanted to thank you again for everything
And
that you've shared.
truth
Yeah.
needs discernment. That's the only thing. I
Discernment.
think that's what, because now in order for us to we have to be able to tap into and develop these more human, our intuition, that conscious feel, be able to feel it in our gut, all these things. It's like, that's what it's going to take now, because the intellect isn't going to help us be able to, it's getting too good. It's going to matter our own our inner truth and being able to tap into that so that we can discern what is really true for us is going to become invaluable in this next stage, when there is so much information that is being thrown at us, and the old ways of discerning what was true and not are no longer work.
Wow. Yeah, so, like, sharpening our intuition to know, like, this is what is right for me, for subjective truths
Yeah.
and Yeah.
Yeah. Subjective truths, but also even being able to go, really not being able to be manipulated even by other truths where it's like, no, I'm really good not, with no other agenda. The more we heal ourselves, the more we become fully integrated, we're not attached or clinging to our own, ideas of what we think is true and what things is not. We can be open. We're not afraid to see ourselves and we're not afraid to see anything out there. We can actually be open to new ideas and new perspectives. So, and we can tap into that and really feel, wait a minute, something's off about this, and it is, it's connected with the intuition because but sometimes I think of, like even like our gut or whatever, some parts of it is attached because our bodies are built for that. And some of it is really by tapping into to spirit, but we need to access all of it right now with everything that's going on in today's world. That is, I think that's the invitation. I see it as an invitation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. And on that note and that invitation, I want to ask a final question, which is from one of our previous
Mm,
guests. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm
Okay.
ready.
They asked, what's a failure that you've had that's let you be successful? This plays into our growth mindset. That's cool.
Yeah. Okay. I've had so many.
Just going through the list in your head, like this one, no, that one.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say there was a time when I was I'll just go with what popped into my head.
Intuition.
I was in Toastmasters, and a lot of when I became an actress, I realized, tying it into my perfectionism, that that was actually a way for me to be seen in the world. But I was my perfectionism was rooted in actually controlling the way I was perceived. And
Oh,
so I only wanted to be out there and be exposed as if I was prepared. So I was a preparer and I was gonna, I prepared better than anybody else. And it allowed me to be very good. Sometimes, even impressive, but you can't be great because greatness doesn't come from that. Greatness comes from all that learning, all the work we do, even with self-discipline. It's like, okay, the self-mastery to this, and then surrendering it and just, and then it flows through you. That's that zone. That's that, So I was limiting myself and I had learned that about myself, but now I was early starting out in this work and went to Toastmasters to, get better at speaking and be able to do talks and things like that. And I hadn't even realized how much I was dragging that old self with me. And there was a speech that was coming up and it was interesting enough, it was on tapping. I don't know if you know tapping. It's called
oh, like EFT?
emotional. Yeah, EFT. I was
Yeah.
going to say emotional freedom technique. And I was going to do a talk on tapping, believe it or not. And for some reason, I could not get myself to memorize it. And I memorized everything because that's part of the preparation. It's like, oh, and there were some technical terms and stuff because I was talking about the history a little bit. And just no matter what I did, I had changed like things like a million times. Yeah, my perfectionism was in extreme mode. It was bad. And I was driving myself crazy and I couldn't memorize it. Trying to write it, trying to be perfect about it. I finally got it. Now it was like mid it was in the middle of the night and I'm still trying to memorize it. And I was like majorly trying to control. I was so unconscious of the whole thing. I was so scared and trying to control how I was going to be perceived. It was like, oh my God, the more I couldn't do it, the more I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. This is going to be terrible. This is going to be, and the more that created even more and more anxiety, which shuts down your prefrontal cortex, whatever. But I was totally unconscious. I was totally sucked into the whole drama of it. I was not coming from my, this was years ago. Not that I'm not capable of going there every now and then too, but so anyways, and it was terrible. It was right before I was supposed to go and I got it. Sometimes I really get these downloads kind of like I'm from my higher self. And it was like, you have to go there and fail. You have to go there and fail And I was even talking to my sister on the phone. I was like, I don't want to go. I know I'm going to be terrible. But I knew I had to fail, which for me was life or death. You have no idea how much ingrained it's really deeply ingrained in like trauma and things like that. So I went, and sure enough, boy, did I fail. Oh my God, it was bad. I couldn't think of anything. And there was someone in Toastmasters, someone will ring a bell every time you say and, or so, or any filler words, but the person was brand new. And so even when I was using it appropriately, like as a, to connect two words together, they were
Oh
like ding, 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 ding. Yeah. And it was just like, I mean, it was just awful. And it was like, it was so, I felt like, at least in terms of my regular standards, it was like, oh, I mean, it was a big thing. And it was all on, the hilarious thing was, it was all on tapping. So I actually went home and it was like, okay, well, I failed. First of all, I survived. But then I actually just started doing the tapping, and we don't need to go into that. Anybody who wants to, it's a way of actually letting yourself go to these negative thoughts and emotions and things like that, but while telling your body that you're safe so that you can actually just, because in the past, if I would have thought about that failure before, it would have been a punch to the gut for the rest of my life. It would have just killed me to know that I was that bad. I exposed myself that bad. That's how much of a perfectionist I was. So I decided, I'm like, I should tap on it. I tapped for like an hour and a half, and all this stuff started coming up. And I realized how much I was turning this work that I was moving towards, and it was before I discovered even the loving discipline, was never about being a star or it wasn't about that. But it triggered something in me that was like that need to be seen as like this is my way to be valuable in the world, to be accepted. Because when I prepared and I performed, that seemed to be, it, and that I was bringing that fear into this journey. So all of my passion about helping people and helping, others heal themselves and evolve got overshadowed by it. Really had become all focused in that moment, at least, on I was using these speeches as my opportunity to be out there in the world, prepared, shining, and this and that. And it was huge, because while I continued to do the work, I was healing a lot of that and integrating a lot of that. And it all started falling away. And by the end of it, it was like, I can think back on that and I just laugh. And I'm so grateful for that experience. And I was so much more freer, not to say that's a deep root for me. So, when it gets triggered, I'll maybe, but it's never as deep as it was, and I'm so much more aware of it. That one, I completely lost all awareness and I got completely absorbed by it, which is the progression of this work. It's not about being perfect. It's really not. It's about committing to it and just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and becoming more and more free. But I really, really failed on that, but I wouldn't call it a failure. First of all, I had the courage to show up even though I knew I was going to fail, you know? And it's important that we all give ourselves, given that in my body actually felt like that was life or death. It's not a small thing. Somebody else would be like, yeah, I could do that. What's the big deal? It's personal to everybody of whatever's going on inside. That was like life or death. And I was like, no, I have to do this. And then, yeah. And as a result of being committed to the work, that experience turned out to be this beautiful release of something that had a real grip, and it was robbing me of my passion for the work, because it's not like, oh, my motivations, my bigger why, it overshadowed my bigger why. That can happen to us. These parts that are so scared, that are in life or death, they can overshadow these really deep, beautiful, meaningful dreams that we have inside of ourselves. And we'll say that, oh yeah, in that moment, we're valuing that more because those parts have taken over and they're valuing safety, because that's all they know. They don't feel the other is safe. So we lose. So it comes at a really, really high cost. And anyways, that's the work. I'm going on and on, but
No, but thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing that story. I think that'll connect to a lot of people too, because that's a big fear, and sometimes things do feel like life and death, but if you choose to do them despite that, like, that shows so much strength.
And then do the integrating afterwards. I think
Yeah,
that was where the real success came from, because I talk in my speech too about how it was like when I decided that I was finally going to become an actress, it was because I actually had faced my mortality with aggressive breast cancer. And it was like, no, you've got it. You almost died with this dream still in you. You've got to do it. But then I was just brutally like, you know, pushing myself, like, what is wrong with you? Just shut up. Just get out there and do it, do it, do it, do it. That it eventually led to success and joy, but it took a lot longer because I wasn't doing the work. I wasn't integrating all of that and caring about what was really going on within myself, and where that fear was coming from in a compassionate, beautiful way, and creating a safe space for myself to continue to gently go out there and tackle this thing that means so much to me. So it's not just you went out there and did it anyway, because that's where that swinging back and forth sometimes between the harsh form of discipline and the completely, having no just letting it go and not actually doing anything that really means anything
yeah,
anymore. That's what happens when you only focus on getting out there and doing it. That's not really where the success came from. It was from, yes, I had to have gone out there and done it. But even if I hadn't done it, even if I was so afraid that I didn't, if I would have processed that experience, there would have been
yeah,
success from it. There would have been something garnered. So
yeah,
it's not about beating yourself up for whether you do or you don't. It's about whatever happens and shows up in you. Do the work to learn and understand it and to integrate it.
yeah. Wow, well, thank you so much for everything that you've shared and for sharing what you've been through, and I think that your experience could help so many people, and it has, obviously. So if more people wanna, like, follow you, I know you have YouTube and other
Yeah.
things, and you have something coming out in December. Do you wanna speak a little bit about where people can find you?
Yes, the best way is you can go to YouTube. It's at Elizabeth Judith Coaching is the YouTube, or you can just go to elizabethjudith.com. And that's where, if you are interested, I'm really excited about creating. It's going to be in January. I'm going to be like, hopefully opening it up in December, but it's going to start in January. It is a 12-month coaching membership for people who want to be able to create their most meaningful, um, achieve their most meaningful goals and desires, but through the loving discipline method, so that they can do it from this beautiful place of wholeness and inner safety, and from the higher self leadership. So goals are important, but they're more about who we become in the process of achieving that. And it gives you this beautiful year-long time frame to see, who could I become in a year if I was completely immersed with the guidance and the community and the support and the commitment, you know, for a whole year. Who could I become? It's called The Art of Becoming You, with a capital U. So there will be a place where you can sign up to get on the waiting list for that, because those who join that first are, there's going to be early bonuses, and yeah, and you get to be part of helping me create it, because it's going to be, this, I'm going to be creating this for the first time. I'm really excited about it, because it's not about, again, I didn't want to do a course, because it's not about just shoving more information out there. Loving discipline, everything about it is about committing to the practice of it, of embodying this um, work and this wisdom. So, anyways,
So
this has gone on
exciting.
for a long time, but it is. I'm really really excited about it, if you can't tell.
Yeah,
And yeah, I'm so grateful that you have given me this opportunity to connect with you. I love what you're doing. It's so
thank you.
impressive, by the way. I
Thank
can't
you.
believe you're only 16, right?
Yes.
Uh, and out there, impacting people, making the world a better place. And yeah, it's been a real
Yeah, well,
privilege.
thank you so much for joining me today. I'm sure this was super valuable to many people, so thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm grateful.